We have a fair bit of business to get through this afternoon. You will see that there is another special meeting of the council to discuss the community councils. We will go through the formal business of Inverclyde Council, which meets at 4 o'clock. We will do that. We'll go into private session for the private papers, and then we will immediately reconvene to do the special meeting of the council regarding the community council. Any apologies or declarations of interest?
Provost, we'll now do a roll call before proceeding to declarations of interest. Can the following members please indicate if they're present at the meeting, either in person or remotely? Councillor Armstrong.
Present in chamber.
Councillor Brennan.
Present remotely.
Councillor Brooks.
Present chamber.
Councillor Cassidy.
Present chamber.
Councillor Clockerty.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Crowther.
Present remotely.
Councillor Curley.
Present in chamber.
Councillor Daisley.
Present in chamber.
Councillor Jackson.
In the chamber.
Councillor Law.
Present remotely.
Councillor McCabe.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor McCluskey.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor McCormick.
Present remotely.
Councillor McGuire.
Present in the chamber.
Provost Mackenzie.
In the chamber.
Councillor McVeigh.
In the chamber.
Councillor Moran.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Nelson.
Present remotely.
Councillor Quinn.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Reynolds.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Robertson.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Wilson.
Present in the chamber.
Are there any declarations of interest?
Thank you, members. Welcome to this meeting of Inverclyde Council. This meeting is being held remotely and also in person, and will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcast available through the council's website. The council is a data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act 2018. We broadcast and record council meetings to fulfil our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with the council's published policies available through the council's website. Members of the council are reminded that they should follow the council's established meeting protocols, including around the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to the meeting. Thank you. Before I move to the business of the agenda, I think it would be remiss of us members if we were not to pay tribute to Councillor Stephen McCabe, who last week received the great honour of being voted Scotland's Local Politician of the Year, which is a tremendous honour in itself, and I think we should all be reflected here in Inverclyde Council on the reflected glory that brings. I'm so pleased for Stephen coming from such a small local authority to be able to carry off it, and I think it is not is so deserving of such an award. I think there are many of us around the table here who will have political differences with Councillor McCabe, but no one can deny his commitment to Inverclyde over the years, or the manner in which he conducts the business for the good of this community. And therefore, I would like you to join with me in congratulating Councillor McCabe in such a great honour. We have an urgent item to come before us this afternoon. Mr. Strachan, would you like to explain that, please?
Yep, thank you, Provost. So you're meant to be aware we issued a late paper which we were planning to bring under urgent business under Standing Order 18, and this was to do with the proposed appointment of Councillor Cassidy to the Executive Oversight Committee of the Cooperative Council's Innovation Network. We weren't able to bring it before because we weren't able to seek Council's approval before because of the nomination deadline for appointment. So we're just looking to deal with that as urgent business today, and we'll note the reasons for that in the minutes. And I think, Provost, you probably deal with that at the end of the scheduled business, but before the business in the appendix.
Thank you. I'm prepared to accept that as urgent business. Is everyone agreed? Thank you. The minutes of meetings of Inverclyde Council committees, subcommittees and boards. The Policy and Resources Committee held on the 20th September 22, page 241 to 247. Councillor McCabe.
Yeah, Provost, I'm happy to move the minutes of terrific, and I also thank you for your kind remarks and comments, kind applause at the start of the meeting. It is an honour that obviously I very much appreciate, but I certainly accept it on behalf of the council. All the work that we've done standing by both elected members and by officers, I think, is reflected in that particular award. My colleague, Councillor Clockerty, was desperate to put a motion before the council congratulating you. But unfortunately, you standing order for the council is unable to do. He's grateful too. He's had the opportunity to congratulate once again for the award.
Thank you, Stephen. The local police and fire scrutiny panel, 21st of September, 248 to 249. Councillor Wilson.
Councillor Cochran, would you a second for that? I verify this is a true minute, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Is there anybody otherwise minded? Thank you. The General Purposes Board held on 21st of September, 250 to 252. Councillor Moran.
Provost, second verse of two records.
Thank you, Councillor Moran. Anybody otherwise minded? Inverclyde Council meeting held the 22nd of September, 253 to 260. I will move that is a true and proper minute. Is there anybody otherwise minded? Thank you. The General Purposes Board held on the 28th of September, 261 to 264. Councillor Moran.
Do it, check your record, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Moran. Anybody otherwise minded? Thank you. The Grants Subcommittee held on the 28th of September, page 265 to 277. Councillor Brooks.
Move it to record, Provost.
Thank you. Is anybody otherwise minded? The Planning Board held on the 5th of October 2022, 278 to 282. Can I ask Councillor Curley to?
I move this to true record, Provost.
Thank you. Is there anybody otherwise minded? Thank you. The General Purposes Board held on the 12th of October, page 283. Councillor Moran.
I move it to true record, Provost.
Thank you. Is there anybody otherwise minded? Thank you. The Audit Committee on the 18th of October 2022, 284 to 285. Councillor Wilson, please.
I move this as a true record, Provost.
Thank you. Anybody otherwise minded? The Social Work and Social Care Scrutiny Panel on the 20th of October, 286 to 288. Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, I'll move this as a true record, Provost.
Thank you. Anybody otherwise minded? The Environment and Regeneration Committee on the 27th of October, 289 to 296. Councillor McCormick.
I move this as a true record, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor McCormick. Anybody otherwise minded? Thank you. The Education Communities Committee held on the 1st of November, 297 to 302. Councillor Clockerty.
I'll move this as a true record, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Clockerty. Is there anybody otherwise minded? Thank you. The Planning Board held on the 2nd of November, 303 to 305. Councillor McVeigh.
Move this as a true record, Provost.
Thank you. Anybody otherwise minded? The General Purposes Board held on the 9th of November, 306 to 307. Councillor Moran.
I move it to true record, Provost.
Thank you. Is there anybody otherwise minded? The Petitions Committee held on the 10th of November. I will move that as a true and proper minute, page 308 to 309. Is there anybody otherwise minded? Thank you. I will also move that the Inverclyde Council meeting held on the 10th of November is a true and proper minute on page 310. Anybody otherwise minded? Thank you. The Policy and Resources Committee held on the 15th of November, page 311 to 316. Councillor McCabe.
Yeah, I move the minutes of true record reports.
Thank you, Councillor McCabe. And the local police and fire scrutiny panel held on the 17th of November, 317 to 318. Councillor Wilson.
I move this as a true record, promise.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Is there anybody otherwise minded? Thank you, members. Item 3 in our agenda is the Chief Social Work Officer Annual Report 2021 to 2022. Earlier this afternoon, the members had a briefing regarding this report, but I will pass over to Alan Stevenson if he would like to speak formally to it.
Provost, thank you. Through yourself, this is the annual report for the Chief Social Work Officer. Once the Council considers this report, it will be lodged with the Scottish Government, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Now, I think those of us who were at the briefing earlier on would be quite satisfied with Mr. Stevenson's report. Is there anybody who would like to ask any further question to Mr. Stevenson at this time? No, therefore, can we agree the recommendations on page number 1? Thank you. Item number 4 in the agenda is the 2022, I think you should say 23, oh no, it's not, 32 financial strategy is right. Page 103, and it's a report by the Interim Director of Finance and Corporate Governance. Mr. Parkin, please.
Thank you, Provost, and good afternoon, everyone. This strategy reflects and includes the impact of the 17th of November autumn statement from the UK government and figures assessed by the Budget Responsibility panel. The impact on Inverclyde Council's 23-24 budget will be reflected in the Scottish Government grant settlement, which will be known week commencing the 19th of December. The main factor over the last 6 months has been a significant increase in bank interest rates, which impact upon investment returns, loans charges and internal resources interest as outlined in the report. All funding models have been reviewed as requested by the June Council, and the proposals in this report increase net reserves by £3.4 million and result in a £500,000 recurring saving from 2023-24. The information will be factored into the report to the Special Council on December the 15th meeting if all matters in the report are approved. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Puckrin. Is there any questions for Mr. Puckrin at this time? Councillor McGuire.
Thank you very much, Alan, for giving us this update. On page 131, table 4C, you put in the different mid-range optimistic and pessimistic scenarios for the inflation for pay and non-pay. Do you foresee that potential risk could either ease with time, as some people in the press are suggesting, or do you think it's likely that we're looking at maybe the pessimistic scenario even worse?
Provost, I was struggling to hear parts of that. You could refer me to the page number.
Of course. The page number is page 130 to 132. It's talking about the different scenarios for the pay inflation. And I was just wondering if you think that the pessimistic scenario could be good looked at in an even worse scenario than what's outlined this year based on the past year.
Thank you, and thank you for clarifying that. The pay inflation figures are obviously a very fluid situation at the moment. I mean, for many years, we've been factoring 2.5% into the financial strategy, and there hasn't been an issue with that. Obviously, this year's pay award that was settled for the SJC employees was 5%. The teachers are currently in a dispute with the employers, and they have received a similar offer, or the same offer of 5%. We've got different groups of public sector workers who've been offered 7.5% or more, and some groups of public sector workers who elsewhere in the UK are on strike for 15% plus. So you can clearly see the impact if, you know, if there was a pay award, anything approaching to some of the latter figures I mentioned there, having our funding gap. As indicated in the report, there is an expectation from the Bank of England and the OBR that inflation will drop sharply over the next 12-18 months. And it has got to be hoped that that will then result in lower pay demands and, as a result, awards.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGann. Councillor McCloskey.
Thank you, Provost. I just want to make a few points on this, which is, you know, with no disrespect to Mr. Puckridge, a fairly dry financial paper, but with some very important politics wrapped up inside it. And I think the first point to highlight is just how this report really brings into stark focus the impact of the UK government's summer of chaos and the soaring inflation and the penalty that we're all now facing because of the choices that government made over the summer. But the second is really just to try to put on the record that Tory penalty really comes on the back of, you know, something that we've discussed in here on a number of occasions, but I think it's worth continuing to mention, which is the consistent underfunding of local government by the Scottish Government over the last 15 years. First with a unfunded council tax freeze, and now with the choice, and it is a choice, to provide a flat cash settlement, which Mr. Puckridge notes in the report, to local government at a time when their budget is increasing in cash terms. And it's a choice that, you know, there is still time to reverse. The Scottish Government are not setting their budget for another 2 weeks. And if we are to minimise the service cuts that we in this chamber want to minimise, it's on all of us to lobby our MSPs, who are going to be the people with a vote on that budget, to make sure that they oppose any measure that cuts Inverclyde's funding. And the final point is just that in a wider one than this individual report, and that's that these cuts that are being proposed by the Scottish Government for local authorities are only the tip of the iceberg. We all know that there's lots of other public services that people in this community rely on that aren't provided by the council. So those of us who are members of the Inverclyde IJB will know that the government are trying to claw back over £6 million of funding. Health budgets in the NHS, despite the well-documented pressure that the service is under this winter, the Scottish Government is carrying on asking the Health Board to make tens of millions of pounds of cuts that will affect services here. And we've also heard in recent weeks police and fire services warning about the impact of cuts in the community. So, you know, I think it's incumbent on all of us when we look at this to think about the wider context that people in this community are going to be facing this winter, the effect that these public service cuts are going to have on everyone who lives here. And I think it's incumbent on all of us, regardless of what political party or political persuasion or none that we come from, to be making representations to all MSPs so that these points can be brought up in the Scottish Parliament when the budget is discussed in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCluskey. Is there any other observations or questions for Mr. Puckridge?
No.
Councillor Purley.
Thank you, Provost. I think it's fair to say that these are challenging times for local government in Scotland. Councillor McCluskey quite rightly says that a lot of this comes from the decisions made over the summer, or I don't know what decisions were actually made over the summer by the UK government, but we're in the situation effectively where they've went backwards and forwards, and actually caused a lot of this turmoil that we're actually living with, especially, and probably will increase the level of inflation going forward. But I think there's ways to look at this, and I think it's important that we actually look properly what's actually the situation in local government funding in Scotland. Yes, we are looking at hard times going forward. Yes, there have been restraints on there. But when I look at the funding in England, which is what's also leads to the funding in Scotland, the UK government funds local government in England, including police and fire, at a value significantly less than what this funding is in Scotland. Now that is a state fact. The council tax in England is £600 on average higher than Band B tax than it is in Scotland. So I'll just leave these facts here for what they go. So I think it's important to get context. Yes, we are facing troubled times, but at the same time, there has been significant funding of local government in Scotland in excess of what is available to other parts of the UK. But going forward, we do need to see how we address the ongoing systemic and significant issues with how we fund local government. Because our argument complaining about the council tax doesn't get the heart of the matter. We need to change how local government is funded. We need to look at how we do it and how we actually get more control locally and decisions made here, so we can actually look at how we actually fund ourselves and make decisions here about how we actually do it in Inverclyde. I think that comes down to the real crux of the issue here. Waiting for decisions to be made and then money to be allocated, the money to be allocated again, doesn't give us control of how we can actually manage Inverclyde and do what we want to do, which is best for the people of Inverclyde. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curley. Councillor McVeigh.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. Just a question for Mr. Puckett, first and foremost, but I've heard a few times from Councillor Curley, Councillor Robertson, about the changes how we're going to fund local government, and these are the part of the government in Scotland, so I look forward to ask the question when you can maybe give an answer to that. But my question is for Mr. Puckett. Mr. Puckett, we heard the statement in November from the Chancellor regarding increasing funding, and I just wonder if you could give us an idea if any additional funding come to Scotland via the Barnett consequentials, and are you aware if any of that's coming to local government? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor McVeigh. Councillor Mr. Pickering.
Thank you, Provost, and through you. The figures that I have seen vary between about 1.5 and 1.8 billion over the next 2 years coming to Scotland via the Barnett's consequentials. There was an analysis done by COSLA a week or so ago, and that certainly indicated that some of that was direct consequentials for local government, and that is over and above any consequentials that relate to education in England, because obviously education in England is funded differently than it is in Scotland, where it forms part of the local government settlement. So obviously I've got to be optimistic and hope that some of that money comes unring fenced and is built into the settlement that will be announced on the 15th of December. But time will tell in that regard, and I'll be more than happy to pick that up in the new year when I report back to members on the detail of the settlement.
Thank you, Mr. Puckett. Councillor McVeigh. Nothing else on that matter. Can we agree the recommendations on page 103 and 104? Agreed. Thank you. Item number 5 of the agenda is the management structure. The Chief Executive, Ms. Long, please.
Thank you very much, Provost. Good afternoon, members. The purpose of the report is to seek signed input and vote in relation to the new management structure. The interim structure has been last with reviews in October last year. The paper advises there's going to be 3 phases to the management review. It acknowledges that the interim structure has worked. However, now is a time for stability and we need to recruit the key posts. This will entail reverting back to having 2 directors for the council, with the Chief Finance Officer and the Head of Legal now reporting directly to myself. This will allow the Director of Environment and Regeneration remit to align to the committee. It will also allow them to concentrate on the regeneration, the regulated services, our ambitions for next year, and also attracting additional funding. The paper asks for the recruitment for this post to commence immediately. Sadly, very sadly, the Chief Finance Officer has announced he intends to retire in 2024. To allow him time to focus on the financial challenges ahead, it is proposed that we move ICT and customer services to the Head of Legal and Democratic Services. Members will also note that the paper looks at the statutory payment for the Chief Social Work Officer and the Chief Finance Officer being reduced to 5%. This is in line with other local authorities and in line with their monitoring officer. There are another 2 phases to the management report. A report will be brought back to members in 2023 once we know the savings that members have taken, and also we have the evaluation and members have considered the evaluation from the shared services. The final phase will be in 2024 when we know more about the impact of the National Care Service. I'm asking members to agree the recommendations outlined in section 2, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Long. Is there any questions for the Chief Executive? Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I thank the Chief Executive for a briefing on this. and basically my party welcomes it. My question is for yourself, Chief Executive. With the new reports you're getting here, do you not think you're giving yourself too much responsibility and too much work in terms of direct reports?
For yourself, Provost, thank you very much, Councillor Wilson. I was hoping that you would expect me to be a hard-working Chief Executive, but currently I speak to the Head of Legal and Democratic Services and the Chief Finance Officer almost on a daily basis. And I think that the structure that we've got in some ways doesn't really reflect what happens in reality. And so I think it makes much more sense for them to have direct support and from myself and direct with myself.
Thank you.
Councillor Rox.
Thank you, Provost. Just a question for our hard-working Chief Executive. Thank you again for doing this. And there are some sort of difficult things to read in here. We will miss Alan and those. The question that I have is really around that and situations like it, just asking for some assurance in terms of our succession planning and the measures that we're putting in place to ensure that we and taking that as an example of the financial cliff the day that Alan leaves us.
To yourself, Provost, thank you very much, Councillor Robertson. There is a paper coming to DNR in the new year on succession planning. I think we need to be realistic. We're not going to replace the kind of experience and breadth of knowledge and but what we are trying to do is to grow our own. And we will look at any, because Alan has given us lots of notice, it's very important that we would go out to recruit and make sure that it's sufficient handover time in with one another. But there is a succession planning is a problem for many local authorities, and it remains a problem for us because of our size and our heavy reliance on individuals. And there is a paper coming to PNR in the new year.
Thanks, Ms. Long. I see no more questions either in the chamber or in the chat for the Chief Executive. Can we agree the recommendations on page 153 and 150? Thank you. Item number 6 in the agenda is the council timetable changes. Mr. Strachan, please.
Thank you, Provost. Yes, this report just requesting 2 changes. The first, the scheduled meeting of the Planning Board is due to take place on the 4th of January, given feedback from members previously, and given the Christmas break, we're proposing to move that to the 9th of January. And we would ordinarily intend to have the LRB the same day, but we're having some difficulties with diaries today, so we're planning to take that offline. But apologies to Councillor McVeigh, I wasn't able to alert him to that before the papers went live. And secondly, fixing the date of Thursday the 15th December for the December budget meeting that had been mentioned before. Just need to get that date in diaries. Happy to take any questions.
Is there any questions for Mr. Strachan? Can we agree the recommendations? Page 164. Thank you. Item number 7, Inverclyde Academy Young Enterprise Company Wicked Wicks. A request by Councillor Cassidy. Councillor Cassidy, would you just like to speak to this?
Thank you, Provost. It gives me great pleasure to bring this motion forward to council to recognise one of the secondary schools that serves my ward and to recognise achievements of some of Inverclyde's young people. Back in September, the June Telegraph broke the news that Inverclyde Academy Young Enterprise Company Wicked Wicks had been named winner of the Renfrewshire Young Enterprise Company Year 2022. Wicked Wicks, as the name might suggest, sold a range of candles and wax melts both locally and at the Young Enterprise Fair in Greyhead. Now, the 7 S6 people behind the company, mindful of the climate emergency, embraced the principles of reduce, reuse, and recycle in the development of their products. The company repurposed salvage jars for candles instead of buying new ones, used broken crayons from the art department of the school as colouring for their candles instead of being thrown out, and unused paper bag packaging for their wax melts and cardboard packaging for their candles. And in the words of the young people, their company went from strength to strength through the Young Enterprise Programme. The team benefited enormously in terms of personal growth, built up knowledge of customer service, communication skills, team working. They developed production and management skills, which they will take on into future studies. And to top it all, they've gained a level 6 qualification for their efforts with Glasgow Kelvin College, which recognised their business skills. It should be noted that in addition to the top Renfrewshire Enterprise Award, the team also won the Banter Award at the Young Enterprise Trade Fair, the Finance Director's Excellent Sales and Customer Service Skills. Another team member also won runner-up of the UK-wide Young Enterprise Journey Award, which recognises the value of their growth and personal development as a looked after young person who has overcome significant adversity to participate and succeed in this programme. As a former S6 Young Enterprise Company Managing Director, I can testify to how hard and challenging the programme can be. Granted, my experience of the programme was a number of years ago, and unlike this group of young people, I've not had to attend to the global pandemic. But despite all the challenges that were presented to these young people, they were able to adapt to new forms of working and turn challenges into opportunities. And I'm sure members would agree with me that this group of young people are not only a credit to themselves, their school and their parents, but they're a credit to Inverclyde. As members know, Inverclyde is the to point above its weight when it comes to enterprise education. From work experience programmes, mentorship programmes, to our second schools engaging in the Young Enterprise Initiative and how we integrate enterprise education into the curriculum in our schools. This is a testament to the value we put in identifying and nurturing children's natural ability to be enterprising and preparing them for a rapidly changing world where they need to have the skills and attitudes to cope with an unpredictable future, to be able to deal with setbacks and disappointments in a positive way and try to learn for the rest of their lives. Finally, while the group of S6 students who set up and ran with the WITS have now all moved on to other educational opportunities, I'm sure members will want to join me in wishing them well in their future endeavours, with maybe I hope that some will one day return and set up the business within Inverclyde. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy, for bringing that fine motion to the council regarding Inverclyde Academy. I was particularly pleased to see that somebody won the Banter Award. That's perhaps something that you could introduce within this council. I'm sure members, we are all happy to accept and welcome this motion from Councillor Cassidy. Thank you. Item number 8 on the agenda is the Inverclyde Task Force. Mr. Jemison, please.
Provost, good afternoon through you. Following engagement with the Cabinet Secretary for Finance and Economy along with the Council Leader and the Chief Executive, it was agreed that a task force would be formed to examine underlying long-term issues affecting Inverclyde and to identify opportunities to address those by bringing together partners to seek solutions. In the initial meetings, it was difficult to arrange the in the initial stages, it was difficult to arrange the task force meetings, but I'm pleased to report to Council that we've now had 2 full task force meetings with ministerial support from both the UK and the Scottish Government, along with senior officials and officers from a variety of partners. Terms of reference have been agreed, and at the first meeting, the Fraser of Allender report on supporting economic recovery was well received. At the second meeting, a presentation was made about the current projects which are either underway or at bid stage, including Greenock Ocean Terminal, Inchgreen, Inverkip, the Shared Prosperity Fund, Levelling Up Fund, and the Clyde Green Freeport bid. During this presentation, the important function which Inchgreen Dry Dock could play was discussed. Officers presented a survey on land and business premises and advised the task force on the work of local employability partnership and the economy groups, which are chaired by the Chief Executive and myself respectively. Other meetings are taking place amongst officers, including a small subgroup with key members of the business community, and progress is positive. Provost, I apologise, there's a compounded error within the report. Paragraphs 2.1 and 4.9 refer to 6 monthly reporting cycles. In the minute of the April meeting, it was agreed that that would be 4 monthly cycles. Happy to take any questions.
Is there any questions for Mr. Jemison, members? Councillor Portray, Councillor Brooks.
It's not really a question, it's really just to thank all the ones who have taken part in this. It's a very important task group. So it's really just a thank you for all the work they have done. And also a special thanks to Mr. Jemison. Stuart is obviously very much under the weather. Thanks very much for dragging yourself out sick pay today, Stuart, for presenting this to us. I think it's much appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Portray. Councillor Brooks.
Thanks very much, Provost. I've got a question and maybe a point of clarity for future reference. So at 3.9 and audited by Mr Jimison was regarding the Enskeen dry dock. I'm aware that Enskeen dry dock does not actually fit at the moment within the position of the city deal, but yet it's been brought up here at the task force meeting. I just wonder if Mr Jimison could elaborate on where we are with that. Is it going to be brought on? Is it not? What does that mean? To allow the council to understand where we are with the Enskeen dry dock. So that's my question. But to you, Provost, as a point of clarity, can I inform the council that our group's representative would like to change, and I would like to stand down as a member of the task force, and Councillor Wilson would become our party's representative on the Inverclyde task force.
Oh no.
Oh yes.
Well, let's take the second part of Councillor Brooks's question there. Do you agree that Councillor Wilson replace Councillor Brooks?
Well, I think it's a matter for the Conservative group who they nominate to the group, so I'm more than happy to welcome Councillor Wilson to the task force.
Thank you, Councillor. And now I go to Mr Jimison for the clarification.
For you, Provost. Inchgreen Dry Dock site is currently under lease to a private company. That lease is live and is being honoured from a payment perspective. The purpose in bringing the dry dock site to the attention of the dry dock was in the same way that we identified a number of different sites, Councillor Brooks, which potentially have the opportunity to increase economic stimulus within Inverclyde. I'm happy to take any further questions if that's required.
Thank you. Is that okay? Good. Thank you. Any other questions for Councillor Mr Jimison? Thank you.
Come in, please.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Crowther.
Actually, that's lovely. Thank you. There's a couple of questions there. First of all, I would like to say that I welcome this paper, and I note there that Stuart is unwell, so could I wish him a speedy and full recovery. I do note that in section 310 of the paper it refers to the 6-monthly cycle, and I understand that Stuart in his introduction had said that it's a 4-monthly cycle. If Stuart could just confirm that that is correct.
Through you, Provost, Councillor Crowther is absolutely correct that it will be a 4-monthly cycle for reports to Council. Okay, that's fine, that's lovely, thank you. Now, if I just actually kind of move on a wee bit on that, basically we'll have before us an appendix, which is the minutes of the meeting. That was the first meeting, which was convened on Monday the 27th of June. However, there was no date, time or venue given for the second meeting, other than a minute that stated that it is in order to collate the information. It was agreed that the next meeting would take place in 10 to 12 weeks. That would then take us up to Monday the 19th September if we base that in the maximum 12 weeks quoted. And if the schedule for subsequent meetings is every 8 weeks is maintained, then that would mean that there would be a meeting on Monday the 14th. As that submission date for the agenda items was also for Monday the 14th of November, I'm happy to accept that the paper states that the task force had, since it's been formed, has only met on 2 occasions is quite accurate. Can I therefore ask why the meeting, which was held on Monday the 19th of September or thereabouts, have not been presented to us today as an Appendix B, and why do we have to wait another 4 months before we, as councillors and indeed members of the public, have the opportunity to see what progress is being made by the task force? I fully understand that such reports may contain material which is commercially sensitive, and I would support papers being redacted accordingly prior to release to the public domain, and believe that this falls under the term of transparency rather than secrecy. So will the papers of this second meeting, do we have to wait a full 4 months for them to be made?
Thank you, Councillor Crowther. I'll go to the Chief Executive for this one, please.
Through yourself, Provost. It's worth saying the meeting was on the 24th of October, and we have another meeting on the 23rd of January. Obviously, the minute of the meeting from October won't be approved until the meeting takes place. Once it takes place, we are content, and it's for the Chair, Councillor Cave and Stuart McMillan, to decide how they want to take that minute forward. I also know that the Alliance Board is also going to get a copy of the minute. So it's not about trying to make sure that people were happy to be transparent. However, it needs to be signed off by the meeting first before it can be published anyway.
Thank you. Is that okay with you, Councillor Crowther?
Yeah, that's fine. It's now that we've got clarification that they have to be signed off, I'm quite happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McCabe.
Yeah, Robert, there's no desire of any lack of transparency here. But just in terms of arranging the meetings, we have had considerable difficulty in arranging diaries with particular ministers to get meetings in it. It's crucially important that we have ministerial representation, particularly from the Scottish Government and from the UK Government there, and it has been pretty problematic trying to hang down dates. That's why the meeting didn't take place in October. As soon as we finished the last meeting, we got a date in the diary for January, and we'll try and make sure we've got regular meetings. I have no difficulty whatsoever once the draft minute is in a appropriate format for that to be circulated among elected members. It will be put in the public domain as well, so and there won't be any information. I think the minutes that need to be redacted either. It's a pretty open and transparent process. We've got a whole range of people around the table, including representatives from the business community as well. So there's no desire to keep anything here confidential. And with regard to the Inverclyde dry dock, I mean, clearly there has been a lot of focus on the Inverclyde dry dock over a number of years now. It is an important economic asset for the community of Inverclyde. We don't have direct control over that asset. It is in private ownership, and I know there's a view that it should be taken into public ownership, but so far the Scottish Government is not prepared to go down that route. So all we can do is try and work as best we can with the owners of the dry dock to try and encourage them to make productive use of the dry dock. And obviously we do have a city deal project at the adjoining site as well, and try and ensure that the work of the city deal project complements the dry dock and try to maximise the use from both assets. But we've got a lot of economic assets in Inverclyde, and the key challenge here is to ensure that this task force does maximise those economic assets. But the principal reason that we set up the task force, at the suggestion, I have to say, of the Cabinet Secretary for Finance and Economy, who's currently in maternity leave, was to try and attract extra funding into Inverclyde. And the success measure that I have for this task force, well, how much funding we attract in and how many jobs that we take from this task force, is highlighted in the report. There are a number of bids that we've got. It is disappointing that we continue to wait for the outcome of these bids. Some may be successful, some may not be successful, but I think through the process of establishing the task force, I think we are hopefully developing a good relationship with the Scottish Government, and officers are certainly working hard on that. I think we've actually developed a pretty good, very good relationship with the UK Government, and I hope that relationship building will help us potentially make sure this task force is a success. But that will be the measure of the success, how much extra funding we leave in and the jobs that it creates for the benefit of this community.
Thank you, Councillor McCabe. I see no more questions for
Convener, if I could just quickly come in, just one bit, it's really just to kind of clarity over the transparency that I had mentioned earlier on, and really it relates simply to any material that is commercially sensitive. Obviously that would not be published, and that it's really just to clarify that.
Thank you, Councillor Crowther. Councillor Robertson.
Roberts, very quickly, I'm not sure if I'm known for my banter, but I'm known for my optimism, and I've always been quite optimistic about the task force and what it has the potential to achieve. And actually, just in terms of an update paper coming to members, I'm aware that most members aren't round the table when we meet as a task force, so just my thoughts were, is that banter possible? Who knows? Is that actually what I feared, even in the midst of my optimism promise, was that it would be a talking shop, it would be a group that met and didn't really move forward to anything, and it has been as far from my experience of the task force as could be humanly possible. Stuart Bill, an MSP, and Councillor McCabe have chaired successfully 2 meetings, which have both been extraordinarily action focused, that have resulted in bids, that have resulted in live things being put on the table to bring jobs, to bring funding to Inverclyde. And really that's probably just the contribution I want to make in terms of an on the ground experience of what the task force has been. I'll continue to be optimistic that the funding that's on the table will come to fruition for us for the betterment of the area.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Therefore, can we agree the recommendations on page 169? Thank you. Item number 9 on the agenda is the Treasury Management Mid-Year Report 2022-23, and this is a remit from the Policy and Resources Committee. And Mr. Puckering, would you like to lead on that?
Provost, this is an item really under the routine items and decisions for notice. I'm just happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Is there any questions for Mr. Puckering?
No.
No questions? Can we agree the recommendations on page 177?
Agreed.
Item number 10. It's the Borough Coat of Arms proposals, a remit from the Education and Communities Committee. And Mr. Strachan, please.
Thank you, Provost. Yes, this is a remit from the Education Communities Committee, which on 1st November considered a report in connection with logistics of removing the Borough Coat of Arms from a number of locations, including the Dardanelles Memorial Fund window in what institution. The committee agreed several things, including acknowledging and thanking the Dardanelles Memorial Fund Committee for the fundraising efforts and commission of the memorial, and agreed that at the request of the Dardanelles Memorial Fund that the window be removed and returned to them. The Inverclyde Council is going to keep the cost of that, but the ask is for the council as trustee of the lot to agree to the decision of the removal of the window. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Strachan. As you know, members, this has already been remitted from the Education and Communities Committee. Is there anybody needing any clarification on anything on it? If not,
Convener, if I could just come in.
Councillor Crowther, please.
Yeah, I've got a couple of comments really to make on that one. And I do know that the paper, we are being requested to agree on the removal of the Dardanelles Memorial window. And I do note further there that section 1.4 subsection 1 of today's paper states that the committee acknowledges and thanks the Dardanelles Memorial Committee, Fund Committee, for the fundraising effort and commission of the Dardanelles Memorial window in the Watt Institute, and B agrees that at the request of the Dardanelles Memorial Fund Committee, the Dardanelles Memorial window be removed and returned to that fund committee. I also note further that in the Education Committee and Communities Committee, the meeting on the 4th of September 2018, section 2.1 states that it is intended that the window will be installed in the Maclean Museum and Art Gallery as a permanent memorial to local efforts during the campaign. A permanent memorial, in my view, lasts more than 4 years. Also, the Dardanelles Memorial Fund Committee raised the funds to commission this memorial window. Can you confirm that they are the legal owners of this commemorative window and also that they have copyright to the design?
Mr. Strachan, can you help us here?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Crowther. So, yeah, I mean, I think it was originally intended to be a permanent fixture. Matters, I suppose, around the review that was subsequently carried out by the council, reported to the committee, I suppose, overtook that, and the Dardanelles Memorial Fund felt that it would be most appropriate, given some of the findings of that the window be removed in order to respect the views of people that responded to the consultation. In light of that, in light of my review of the situation, I'm content with memorials with the funds asked that it be removed, and I'm content that it's the right thing for the council as the trustee of the lot to agree to that.
Okay, could I also just kind of add there that the background and the context that's listed in the papers of the 1st of November states that in relation to the memorial window that there's 3 options. Option A was to leave it in situ with the interpretation of the Gourock Borough coat of arms. B was to remove the section of the window containing that same coat of arms, and C was to remove the entire window and return to the Dardanelles Memorial Fund. With the recommendation on the paper being C, which was to remove that entire window and return to the Dardanelles Memorial Fund, well, the justification for this being that the Dardanelles Memorial Fund have specifically requested that the window be returned to them, would I be correct in saying that there was meaningful negotiations between representatives from Inverclyde Council and the Dardanelles Memorial Fund Committee?
Yes, that's right, Councillor Craddock.
Okay, that's fine. It's just that I've been hearing stories there that basically that the Memorial window was effectively tainted, and that was due to the inclusion of the Darragh crest, which bears the sable man, being included in the coat of arms. Now, if I just kind of deviate very, very slightly, I know that the heraldic crest that's been lodged with the court of the Lord Lion also, I understand, has different variations of that Darragh crest. And rather than putting it out for a new heraldic crest for Gourock, would it not be better to investigate whether the alternative Darragh crest, which I understand has sailing ship in the centre and 3 trees, 2 of those trees being at the top of the crest and 1 lower, would it not be better that we go down that line?
Mr. Sharp.
So, I mean, I think, Councillor Grant, we already had the decision of the committee in respect to this matter, but I'm sure that officers in taking this away will give that due consideration, as well as part of one of the recommendations that was agreed by the committee back in November was to investigate the feasibility of creating a new coat of arms. So I'm sure that can be taken into account as well, your comments around that. And I see Ms. Bates nodding on that.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. If just finally, if I just come in finally, because I am certain that many families who lost ones in Gallipoli will be extremely disappointed at this proposal to remove the memorial window. And from a personal perspective, I know that the Hellas Memorial in Gallipoli, for the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, for the fallen of the whole of the Gallipoli campaign, and in place of the commemoration for those 20,960 Commonwealth servicemen who died during that campaign. Among the fallen was my late mother's cousin, Samuel Bonner, who served with the Argyll Sutherland Highlanders. So obviously, I have details of that where his the panels that his name can be found on, and I'm sure that many other people locally will also be aware of this. And it is disappointing that the window will be removed, but surely if the request has been agreed by committee and also by the Dardanelles Memorial Fund Committee, so you will be pleased to know that I will abide by that decision and not challenge it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crowther.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the purpose of this report coming before the committee is pretty narrow. For us as trustees to agree that we would proceed with the removal of the window. And the other reports there for background information, and I'm not making the education committee anymore, but sure he's not been discussed in detail. And I know that the convener would rather the window wasn't removed, but the reality at the end of the day, if we accept the ownership of the window belongs to the Dardanelles Committee, then we've got to respect their wishes. It's not certainly my desire or the desire of the convener for the window to be removed. We very much appreciate the all into the window being put in the place in the first place, and the Gallipoli campaign and what that Chibata is a very important event in the history of this community. My grandfather did fight not only for Gallipoli but for the Australian Imperial Force rather than for any Scottish regiment. But we have to respect that that's what the group want, and I would hope that the group use the window in a way that does mark and recognise that event and the like the meeting, but I'd rather we will be, but we are.
Thank you, Councillor McKay. Can we agree the recommendations on page 187? Thank you. Item number 11 on the agenda is the Trust Fund Annual Accounts 21-22. Mr. Cochrane, please.
Thank you. Presenting the Berkmar Trust accounts and the accounts for the Watt Institution Trust funds for approval by the trustees before the Provost as chair and myself as honorary treasurer of the trusts sign them. The report highlights the usable balances for both organisations and also highlights the generous donation of £8,000 during this financial year for the Temianka Foundation to the Watt Trust. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is there any questions for Mr. Cochrane? No. Can we agree the recommendations on page 201? Thank you. Yeah. Councillor Brennan, would you want to ask a question?
Thanks very much. I just posted comment in the chat, so it's just like Mr. Cochrane has mentioned, I also want to add my thanks as a ward councillor for the much appreciated donation from the Temianka Foundation to develop a creativity space within the Watt Institution. I hear the space is well used and it's an excellent addition to the facility. I just also wanted to add a bit of a comment about some links that there are, because we know of Dr. Temianka's father as a musician, but his grandfather was also an important figure in Greenock's history as a faith leader of the small but significant Jewish community that was settled in Greenock in the late 19th and early 20th century. And a number of people would have looked to this Temianka for spiritual and pastoral support, and they're now buried in Greenock Cemetery. And these are graves of people who don't have family members on the council to speak for them, or indeed family members anywhere at all. So I just want to seize on the family links here as part of this report to take this opportunity to also thank some local researchers for uncovering key information about this community. Thank Mr. Sammy Stein for his ongoing work towards restoring the graves in a meaningful way, and also express thanks to local cemetery staff for the support they are providing in this piece of work. And it's a really important piece of work for our community's history as well as for its future. And this work, I think, along with the donation from Dr. Temianka outlined in the report, just sort of typifies the real and living community appetite that we're hearing in the talk about the task force as well, from people who live here now and also people whose links with Greenock are from centuries past, from organisations and private individuals. And it's an appetite that exists within Greenock to restore, repair and renew the parts of the community that most need it. So I just wanted to add my thanks here today.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. And thank you very much for the very important points that you have highlighted in your comments. Thank you. Can we agree the recommendations? We have already agreed, I think, on page 201. The next piece of business is the piece of business that Mr. Strachan referred in earlier, the appointment to the Executive Oversight Committee of the Cooperative Council's Innovation Network. Mr. Strachan, please.
Thank you, Boris. So, as members will be aware, on the 20th September, the P&R Committee decided that the Council join and apply to be a member of the Cooperative Council's Innovation Network. The most senior tier of governance within that is its Executive Oversight Committee. The network recently announced vacancies on that committee, and following consultation with myself and the Council's Chief Executive, Councillor Cassidy, stood for election. It was only confirmed on Monday that the Council had been successful in being elected, subject to the approval of the Chair of the Council and subject to the approval of Council today. So what we're looking for is approval of the appointment of Councillor Cassidy to the committee, and subject to that being ratified by the Chair of the network. I have to take any questions.
Members, can we approve the appointment of Councillor Cassidy to the Executive Oversight Committee? Thank you. Now we will go into private session, please.
I think we're okay now.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Strachan. Call this meeting to order. we will take the attendance, the 7 as in the previous full council meeting. Do we have any apologies or rather declarations of interest for this community council meeting? Thank you. There's one item on the agenda, the review of the scheme for the establishment of community councils in Inverclyde. And it's a report by the Corporate Director of Education Communities and Organisation Development, Head of Legal Democratic Services. Mr. Strachan, is that Mr. Peter MacDonald, please?
Thank you, Provost. So this report implements a remit to the Head of Legal and Democratic Services from the Policy and Resources Committee. Officers reported to that committee on 20th September this year, indicating that in the context of emergence from the COVID-19 pandemic, ongoing capacity building engagement with and support of the community councils, anticipated community council elections in 2023, the lack of established community councils in some areas of Inverclyde, and the period since Inverclyde scheme was last reviewed, that it was appropriate that a formal review of the scheme now be undertaken. A decision to do so is a matter reserved to a special meeting of the council and requiring a resolution of not passed by not less than 2/3 of those voting. This report therefore seeks such a resolution to formally start that process. There are a number of stages involved in the review, and these are set out in the appendix to the report with an indicative timeline. There are a number of public consultations in that process, and a further report will be brought back to the council following the completion of the first formal consultation, advising of feedback in that consultation and recommendations taken into account in the same. Engagement with community councils has already commenced, and the Community Council Champion has been kept updated on and involved with that engagement, and in the following reports being brought before yourselves. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. MacDonald. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you very much, Provost. Yeah, I do welcome this report, and I've got no challenge with it, but it's a point of clarity on the consultation. I just wonder if you can have clarity on what position elected members should take when this goes through, because we attend community councils also as elected members, so we seem to have a sort of, we think we've got a stitch in the game, we're part of it, but we're not really. So I just wonder if there's any clarity from legal of whether we should take part or whether we should wait for the community councils to have the consultation, or sorry, leave it, Inverclyde Council has had the full consultation with the public, with the community councils, and then it comes back to us, or should we enter at this stage of consultation?
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Mr. MacDonald, do you have any advice for Councillor Brooks?
Well, at the end of the day, the elected members are members of the community as well, so they are perfectly entitled to make representations in the terms of any consultation. But equally, as elected members of the council, they have got other routes with which they can bring their opinions before officers. So, but they would certainly not be barred from participating.
Thank you, Councillor Maguire.
Thank you, Provost. I've had a quick look over the good practice that is referenced in the paper here. What I was wondering was, has there been consideration given to looking at ways of increasing participation and diversity of our community councils, purely because I know that throughout the pandemic we ourselves moved online. Some community councils in our local authority area did move online, others didn't. Some parent councils moved online, and some of what I've heard from the community is that participation actually increased, and that some people that otherwise haven't returned since they returned to online has dropped, actually the participation has dropped for some of these places. So I just wondering, can we include as part of this consultation the view of actually looking at widening digital and online participation so that we can include those people that maybe are homebound, maybe they can't get back to work to the local area, to the local community centre or hall to attend those meetings. Can we please include as part of this consultation and look at digitising and increasing accessibility of our community council so that we can ensure that public participation is maximised? I'm not saying, Councillor Wilson, that we should not have in-person meetings. I'm just saying that there would be a possibility of having online inclusion to ensure that as many people from our community as possible can actually participate rather than certain members being excluded.
Thank you, Councillor Maguire. Mr. MacDonald, is that noted?
Indeed, yes. The scheme as it stands wouldn't prevent them from having those sorts of remote meetings. And my CLD colleagues and myself are involved with engagement with the community councils anyway. That's one of the things we're discussing with them. Wouldn't necessarily need any changes to the scheme to let them do that, but the different types of meetings is something that we are discussing with them.
Thank you. Councillor Moran.
Hi, thank you, Provost. Like myself, we're very fortunate in Port Glasgow. We have a very good community council.
and we're always told it's a third tier of local government now, which it is. My question to Mr MacDonald is, what sort of budget have they got for the consultation? And we never really thought to think, just if we run the national television to recruit for carers, that we could do something similar to attract people to become community councillors, which is the third tier of government now. So it's got a big responsibility. There's a lot of big decisions they could make, and also the consultation, not we go to the usual suspect. We ever thought it maybe different and maybe attacking bowling clubs and other places that are really constituted and very much part of the communities which we serve, and maybe we could expand the crawl, make a lot more people who are interested in taking up this challenge, because at the end of the day, it's something we have to get right, and we have to get this third tier of local government functioning properly, and that is our job to do that. So, is there a budget for advertising, and where are we advertising, and when will we know if we get a good response? We have to wait till maybe halfway through and say this isn't working, let's look at different, and is there an opportunity to go and get on the table? Because at the end of the day, if the money's there, you should be doing it.
Thank you, Councillor Moran. Mr MacDonald?
Through you, Provost, so the consultations are working within the existing Community Council's budget. So we haven't, there's not necessarily additional funding allocated to it at this stage. There are 3 different stages of consultation envisaged. So this is just very much an initial one, looking for comment on the makeup of the community councils and the areas that they work in. But that's certainly something we can look at in the next round of consultation if we want to expand budgetary considerations for it. My colleagues from CLD are also engaging with non-community council community groups throughout Inverclyde, but in particular in those areas that don't presently have community council representation, with a view to trying to bring them on board and expand our coverage of community councils.
Thank you, Mr MacDonald. Mr Strachan.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. All I was going to say was really what Mr MacDonald said there, but obviously as there are 3 stages to consultation, we'll be able to keep it under review and then see if there's more that we could usefully do to try and reach out to others as we move along. Councillor Moran.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
I just think that, with respect, we've tried this before, it doesn't seem to work. We need to start looking at it differently. We've seen these papers 1,000 times. We really need to see something different if we want to try and attract people to become community councils and tell them it's a real, tangible difference they can make to their communities. With CLD, you're who to talk to, it's your usual stuff. We really need to do something different here, and this is our opportunity to do it.
We'll speak with communications.
Yeah, Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Provost. I think everyone in this room is probably thankful for the role that community councillors play. I think we should just probably all want to thank the people who keep them going. I think I've just got 2 questions to ask. The first is on the timeline for the review, Peter. In 4.2, it says elections for the community council are due in September 2023. It's hoped to complete a review at that time, but the timetable seems to go on for 11 months. I'm just wondering how those 2 things line up, and are we going to be able to have this concluded by September 2023 if the consultation is lasting 11 months? And in that case, where does that leave us in terms of the elections? And the second thing, just picking up on Councillor Moran's point, how are other council local authority areas are surely facing the same sort of issues at the moment? Are other local authorities currently going through a review process? And to Councillor Moran's point about advertising, if other local authorities are also having elections to community councils, is there perhaps any way that the Scottish Government might be persuaded to run a national campaign to advertise the role of community councillors? Because I know around council election times, and obviously around general election time, there is active campaigns from the Electoral Commission and from the Government to try and promote people's standing. Is there any similar, are you aware of any similar plans that might be happening at a Scottish Government level to do that if it's not something we can necessarily do ourselves? Thank you.
Mr MacDonald.
Through you, Provost. So I think did I have 2 questions in there, or am I missing the third one? So I'll go through the ones I remember, but please, Councillor McCluskey, feel free to highlight to me if I missed one of them. So on your timeline question, The 11-month timeline is from Scottish Government guidance, but it will depend on how the cards fall, as it were, with the levels of feedback that we get. It may be that we can bring it in quicker than in 11 months and still make a September community council elections date, or it may be that it takes longer than that. What officers were envisaging doing is we would come back nearer the time, and if it looked like the direction of travel with the review was such that there's an argument for pushing the election date back, we would report on that basis. Whenever you start a review of this sort, because of the time that it covers, there is inevitably something you will come up against. So that is something certainly we are mindful of, and we would come back to members on near the time. For your question 2, you were... I should have written that down as you said it. Sorry, apologies, Councillor McCluskey. What was your second question there?
Right. The second question is whether there's sort of two connected. One which is are we looking at other local authority areas to understand how they're running this project, and linked to that, if other local authority areas are also having community council elections, is there any opportunity in terms of addressing Councillor Rand's point to be involved in some kind of national campaign to promote uptake?
Apologies, I wasn't scribbling fast enough there. Again, through you, Provost, as to other community councils, it's not that all the council areas do a review at the same time. They all happen at different times, but we have certainly looked at other councils and seen how they have progressed reviews in the past. As regards your question on are other councils going through the same process, the possibility of aligning community council election dates across all of Scotland is something that has been mooted in community council liaison officer groups, but it's not happened. So it is not like local government elections where they all happen on the same day. It will depend on the individual schemes in individual council areas, whether they will or will not have an election. So they don't happen at the same time across the whole of Scotland. And some larger councils like to stagger their community council elections across their areas because of the numbers they have to deal with.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Stratton.
Thanks, Bob. I was just going to say as well, for the assurance of members, that we also link in with colleagues in the Improvement Service and the Scottish Government to make sure that, as Peter referenced there, that we sort of tie in and follow best practice as well. I mean, it has been some time since the scheme was last reviewed. It is due a review. I can assure you that there'll be a number of reports that members will need to see over this, so there'll be plenty of opportunity for your input, but those are very helpful comments today.
Councillor Robertson and Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Provost. I'm just going to add a contribution to a theme that's emerged from the comments that have gone before, but I hope I will still add something. Obviously, in notwithstanding the fact that there's a pretty serious legal process that's outlined in the paper in terms of what has to happen for community councils serious enough and viable to make this happen on a second formal meeting this afternoon. It really is about communication, engagement and participation. And I'm aware that this week alone I've spoken to people in my capacity as the Alliance Board Chair about the locality planning requirements that we look at through the Alliance, and also we've just looked at the IGB audit paper which highlighted the need for progress in terms of locality planning through HSCP arrangements. And albeit I know that this is different, it's on a different level of legal constitution, but it's the same process. It's the same process of facilitating and enabling our community members to communicate and engage and participate in the civic processes. I'm just wondering if there's opportunity to bring this joint intention, this joint purpose together in the 3 forums and actually do something. Well, we're going to be doing them in 3 different spheres, while we can merge them as much as possible in one sphere, and take the opportunity to really look at membership and constitution and widening out of coverage of our community councils in the context of what we'll be doing through the Alliance and through the HSCP and IGB. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Councillor McCabe.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. I just want to remind my colleague, Councillor Rand, that actually there should be 2 community councils in Port Glasgow, and that only one of them, Port Glasgow West, which largely covers the Ward 2 part of Councillor, Port Glasgow part of Ward 2, has been operating reasonably effectively, I have to say. Those who are, and it is only a small number, I have to say. I don't think all the places in the community council are felt they do a good job. They've got a good profile. They speak up strongly for the community, but they've made it absolutely clear that they don't want to represent the whole of Port Glasgow. And Port Glasgow East Community Council has not been formed since we last reviewed the community councils. And I did move when we last reviewed the community councils that there should be one community council for the whole of Port Glasgow, because I thought that was the best interest of the whole of Port Glasgow. Unfortunately, the Majority Council didn't agree with me, led by my colleague Councillor Clough, who stabbed me in the back. I've proven to be right, because the people of Port Glasgow East have not had a community council for the whole of the last council term and before that. And if you actually look at the areas that don't have community councils, I would argue they are some of the areas that most need community councils. So the scheme is clearly not working, it's clearly failing if we can't have the whole of Inverclyde represented by community councils. So for those, and that is the case, I've heard the representations from members of Port Glasgow, the existing members of Port Glasgow West Community Council. Well, we don't want to represent a bigger area. We're quite happy representing the area we're representing, despite that one of the key members of the Community Council literally lives a stone's throw from Port Glasgow East Community Council area. But if we're going to make sure that, I don't believe in Community Council, I think they can work effectively. If we're going to make sure that they work effectively, we have to design the scheme that ensures that the whole of Inverclyde is represented by community councils, because we failed miserably the last time to achieve that objective, and we sat, and okay, it means that I don't need to go to a meeting at Port Glasgow West Community Council really, because I've got a few sheep living in the Port Glasgow, but I'd rather be going to a meeting of a Port Glasgow Community Council, or even Port Glasgow East if we can get to, but I think that's unrealistic. I go to Kilmacole Community Council, and the people in Kilmacole Community Council are very articulate, they're very capable of standing up for their communities and representing their communities. They do call on us as ward members to support them as well, to see us as ex officio members of the Community Council as well, and to give us our place. But they're more than able to represent the community of Kilmacole and Forest Village. Whereas down the road, in Oronsay, in Park Farm, in Woodhall, etc., there is no representation from the Community Council. And I think, as I say, if we are going to learn the lessons of the past, is to ensure we have a scheme that ensures that the whole of Inverclyde is represented by Community Council.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Cape. Councillor Cassidy.
Thank you, Props. I've just got a few things to say to the board. As council first chamber, one of my roles in this head of service are council campaign. It's a role that I feel privileged for, one which I take extremely seriously. Taking on the role earlier this year, I brought my experience and knowledge of community councils and the challenges they face this council. Experience and knowledge that I've built after several years as a community councillor on the Inverclyde Council. I'm pleased though when it comes to experience and knowledge of being a councillor, I'm not alone in this council, as our deputy leader, Councillor Maguire, and Councillor Quinn McVeigh, like me, we're all community councillors until being elected to this council. Community councils, as we said, they are the voices of diverse communities which make up Inverclyde. They are a third tier of government. They bridge the gap between the communities of the communities of those of us who have the privilege to hold elected office. They compromise the people to care about their community and want to make it well. As voices of the community, it's important that their views and thoughts are taken aboard by all local politicians. It should say that most community councils across Scotland, there's been challenges over the last few years with the COVID-19 pandemic to exacerbate them. Every community council is unique and have their own issues. When I took on this role, I knew there needs to be a reset in our engagement with community councils. The scheme establishment, as we said today, needed updated. Well, it was fit for purpose in 2011 when it was last agreed. It's no longer reflected the work needs community councils for 2022 and beyond. As a report notes, there was a recent workshop facilitated by officer attended by a number of existing community councils and myself. The meeting demonstrated the clear willingness from all community councils and wanted to reset engagement and foster stronger cooperative engagement going forward. The workshop provided feedback, established local training to support the community councils required. It also highlighted that those community councils want to see this scheme revised and updated to reflect their work needs. I'm grateful to officers for their engagement and the cooperative approach they've taken in progressing this forward, and that reset of our engagement with community councils and discussion around the scheme being updated. And I know community councils appreciate the collaborative approach they have taken as well. I look forward to continuing that in the months ahead. And I would like to agree with Councillor McCluskey. I think we do owe a debt of gratitude and thanks to many of the community councillors serving across Inverclyde. They don't do it for personal gain, they do it for their communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't see any more lights on, nothing else in the chat. Can we agree the recommendations for this agenda item? Thank you. I thank you, members, for your attendance at both these meetings this afternoon. And particularly, I thank officers for the way they've prepared quite an extensive set of minutes and the work they've done in arranging this meeting. Thank you all.